Ever feel like drowning?
Of
Or
course,
like
yes.
overwhelmed with all the research out there?
Hmm.
Trying to figure out what's actually good and what's not.
I feel that. It's a lot to sift through.
It really is. I mean, trying to understand all that jargon
Mm.
and the different ways they do research
Yeah.
makes you wonder if you can even trust the stuff, you know?
Right.
And that's where this whole idea of research transparency comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we're doing a deep dive today into something called the Research Transparency Index, RTI, they call it for short.
Yeah, it's a great tool.
It's like a decoder ring or something?
Yeah.
To help us figure out what's what.
Yeah, not just what the research says, but like how good the methods were, how trustworthy it is.
Okay, so elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this transparency thing such a big deal in research anyway?
I mean, think about it. We use research for like everything, right? Healthcare decisions, business stuff, even like big policy decisions.
Yeah, for sure.
But what if that research is shaky? Like, what if you can't even check if it's right because they didn't tell you how they did it?
Okay, yeah, that's a little scary.
Right. So lack of transparency, it makes people not trust research. And that affects us all.
You're not kidding. So it's not just like, people trying to cheat or be dishonest.
Sometimes, yeah. But honestly, even researchers with good intentions, they can miss stuff, leave out important details without meaning to.
And those details can mess up the whole thing.
Totally. Makes it hard to replicate, see if the results hold up.
So RTI is like a safety net.
Yeah. Helps researchers make sure they're being transparent from the start.
Okay, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So this paper we're looking at is from, where was it?
The Leadership Quarterly.
Right. Known for being pretty high quality.
Yeah. They describe RTI as this free online tool. Anyone can use it.
Oh, nice.
And it looks at how transparent quantitative research manuscripts are.
Quantitative, so numbers heavy stuff.
Right. Surveys, experiments, that kind of thing. And it uses, get this, technology A&D experts to assess it.
Fancy.
Yeah. There are like 18 key criteria across 5 research stages.
18. Oof. Even I'd have trouble keeping track.
You and me both. And that's the thing, even pros, they can miss things.
Right. Especially when they're so deep in their own work, right?
Totally. So RTI, it's like a second pair of eyes. It's helping you catch stuff before you even submit your paper.
Smart. Saves a lot of headaches later, I bet. So like pre-flight check. Make sure everything's good before you take off.
Exactly. But how does it actually work, though?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
It's pretty simple. You upload your manuscript to the RTI website.
Okay.
And it uses, get this, text mining to analyze what you wrote.
Text mining.
It means it looks for specific words and phrases.
Oh, so it's looking for clues about how transparent the research was based on those 18 criteria.
Precisely. Like, did they clearly say what their strategy was? Did they do any extra analyses after the main one? Things like that.
Extra analyses.
Yeah, sometimes researchers do more digging in the data after the initial analysis. It can be fine, but they got to be clear about it.
Gotcha. So RTI helps avoid those, like red flags.
Yep. It not just finds problems, it actually gives suggestions for how to improve the paper.
Ooh, like a personalized coach, almost.
Right. So researchers are more likely to get published, but it's not just about them.
Oh, right. All those other people.
Yeah, editors, reviewers, and then just, us, everyone who uses research to make decisions.
Right. We all rely on this stuff, whether we realize it or not. So RTI, it's like bigger than just academia.
Absolutely. It could change how we all engage with research.
Okay, now I'm really interested.
Yeah.
So how does it benefit those different groups?
Well, first, imagine you're a researcher, you work super hard on a paper, and you're ready to send it to a journal.
Big moment.
For sure. And with RTI, you can be way more confident knowing you've checked everything for transparency.
That's huge. Takes a lot of pressure off, I bet.
And it's not just about avoiding mistakes. It actually gives specific feedback, like, hey, maybe explain this part about your data analysis more clearly. That kind of thing.
Oh, so it helps you make the paper better, too.
Exactly. Now, what about those journal editors and reviewers?
Right. They have to read SOMUCH stuff.
It's crazy. And RTI, it's like their secret weapon. It flags potential issues quickly so they can focus on the important stuff.
It saves them a ton of time, right?
Absolutely. It makes the whole review process smoother.
So it's like a superpower, seeing transparency issues right away.
Right. But what about the rest of us, people who aren't publishing in journals and stuff?
Yeah, what good is it for, like, the average person?
Let's say you're reading a study about a new leadership program, and you want to know if it's legit.
Happens all the time, right? We see research everywhere, whether we know it or not.
For sure. And RTI, it's like a BS detector. You can quickly see how good the research is, how transparent they were.
Okay, that's pretty powerful.
Uh-huh.
Sounds like RTI is good for, well, pretty much everyone.
I think so. But how do we know it actually works? Can a computer really judge something as complex as this?
Good point.
Hmm.
I mean, it sounds impressive, but
Right. Well, the people who made RTI, they took this seriously. They did what they call validity studies.
validity studies.
Yeah, to see how well RTI matched up with what human experts thought.
So it's like humans versus the algorithm.
Exactly. And they didn't make it easy either. They used articles from all these top-tier journals, different topics, different methods, the whole shebang.
Okay, so they got these PhD students, they know their stuff, and they have them rate the papers for transparency.
Yep. Gave them a checklist based on those 18 criteria.
And then they compare those ratings to what RTI came up with.
You got it. And guess what?
I'm on the edge of my seat. Did it work?
It was amazingly good. They agreed on most things. Shows that RTI is actually really good at assessing transparency.
Wow, okay, color me impressed.
Yeah.
But did they always agree perfectly?
There were some interesting things, actually. Even the PhD students sometimes weren't sure how to score certain things.
Well, yeah, I guess transparency isn't always black and white.
Right. And sometimes, get this, RTI was actually stricter than the humans.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, when it came to specific numbers, RTI was all about the details, while the humans were a little more forgiving.
So it's like having a super meticulous research assistant.
Totally. Never misses a detail. But they didn't just stop there. They took that feedback and actually improved RTI.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, made the descriptions clearer, added a new criterion about something called effect size.
Effect size, what's that?
It's about how big the impact of something is. Not just whether it's statistically significant, but does it actually matter in the real world?
Oh, interesting. So practical significance, not just numbers.
Exactly. And with these improvements, they did a second study. Same thing, comparing RTI to human experts.
Okay, and round 2, how'd it go?
Even better. The agreement was even stronger. Shows that RTI is really reliable.
Wow, okay, they've really got something here. So we have this tool. It can help make research more transparent. But how do we actually use it? Like students, reviewers, all those people.
Let's start with students. Imagine being able to submit your thesis and know that it's top-notch when it comes to transparency.
Right. That would have been a lifesaver back in the day.
Totally. RTI helps students understand best practices, make sure their work is good. It's like having a virtual mentor.
So it takes out some of the guesswork.
Exactly. And for reviewers, it's, like I said, a lifesaver. Instead of spending hours reading every detail, they can use RTI to flag potential problems quickly.
Makes them more efficient, right? And lets them focus on the big picture.
Absolutely. But what about the rest of us? Just trying to keep up with all the research out there, like, say you're a business leader deciding whether to use a new training program, or a parent looking at different ways to teach your kid.
Or just trying to figure out if that new diet everyone's talking about is legit.
Exactly. RTI can help you cut through all the noise and see if the research is any good.
Okay, so it's about empowering everyone to be smarter about research, no matter who they are.
That's the idea. But remember, it's just one tool. It doesn't replace critical thinking.
Right, it's not about blindly trusting a score.
Nope. It's a starting point. You still got to ask the right questions. Are the methods clear? Do other studies say similar things? Any red flags?
So it's about being more informed and engaged no matter what your expertise is.
And that brings us to what's next for RTI. The researchers, they want to use it to study trends in transparency.
Oh, cool. Like, see how it's changing over time.
Exactly. Which fields are doing well? Where are the problem areas?
So it's like holding a mirror up to the research world, seeing where we need to improve.
Yep. And this isn't just for academics. Think about funding agencies, policymakers. They can use RTI to decide who to support.
Right. So prioritize research that's transparent from the start.
Exactly. Make sure the research we're using to make big decisions is actually trustworthy.
Okay, you've convinced me. RTI is a game changer. But you mentioned earlier it's not perfect. What are some of the limitations?
Well, one thing is the scoring system. It's pretty simple right now. Doesn't always capture all the nuances.
Like giving a letter grade instead of a percentage?
Yeah, something like that. And it's mainly for quantitative research right now. Doesn't work as well for qualitative stuff, which is a whole other beast.
Right. Qualitative is more about interpretation and stuff.
Exactly. But even with those limits, RTI is a huge step forward.
Yeah, it really seems like it.
And they're always working on it, making it better, making it more nuanced, tailoring it to different types of research.
That's great. So it's going to keep evolving, become even more useful.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the tool itself. It's about changing the culture of research,
Oh, interesting.
making transparency the norm. RTI starts those conversations, helps us all do better.
Researchers, reviewers, Everyone.
Everyone. It's about raising the bar for quality, making sure the knowledge we have is actually reliable.
So it's about more than just checking boxes, right?
Right. It's about being open and honest about how you did the research, giving enough detail so others can understand and see if it's valid.
So being accountable to the scientific community and to the public.
Exactly. And that's what RTI helps with, makes researchers think more carefully about their work, how to make it more transparent.
So it's a tool, but it's also a mindset shift.
I think so, yeah. And that shift can change everything.
Really?
When researchers are transparent, it's easier for reviewers to do their job, journals can keep their standards high, and people can actually trust the research that shapes our world.
So transparency leads to trust, which leads to better research overall.
Exactly. It's a win-win for everyone. And now we turn it over to you, our listener.
Oh yeah, our listeners.
Thinking about RTI, how could you use it? In your work or just when you're reading research?
Maybe you're a researcher working on your next big paper, or you're a business leader making important decisions.
Whatever you do, RTI can be a powerful tool. It's about embracing transparency, making sure the research we use is actually worthy of our trust.
That's it for this deep dive into the Research Transparency Index. We hope you found it helpful.
Remember, learning never stops. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.
See you next time.
Bye for now. They brought in a whole team of PhD students.
Oh, wow. The real expert.
Yeah, all experts in their fields. And they had them look at a bunch of published research articles.
Okay.
And they gave them this detailed checklist, based on those 18 criteria we talked about, to see like how well each article measured up to those standards.
So it was like humans versus the algorithm. See who's better at spotting those transparency issues.
Exactly. And to make it even tougher, they picked articles from all these different top management journals.
Oh, so good mix of topics and methods.
Right, making sure it wasn't just one specific type of research.
Okay, so the PhD students are going through these papers, carefully rating them on all those criteria.
Right.
What happens next?
Then they compared those ratings to the scores that RTI came up with.
Oh, okay.
They used some fancy statistics to see how much they agreed, how closely those two sets of ratings lined up.
Don't leave me hanging. How did it go?
The results were really impressive.
Really?
The humans and RTI, they were mostly on the same page. Showed that RTI is actually pretty darn good at this whole transparency thing.
Okay, that's really interesting. But were there any places where they disagreed, like where RTI and the PhD students saw things differently?
Yeah, there were a few.
Oh, like what?
For one, they noticed that even the PhD students sometimes had trouble figuring out how to score certain things.
I guess it makes sense. It's not always super clear-cut, is it?
Right, like what exactly counts as enough detail or whatever. And then, get this, sometimes RTI was actually stricter than the humans.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like when it came to reporting specific numbers, like the exact statistical values or what software they use, RTI was like, nope, got to be more specific.
Yeah.
While the humans were a bit more lenient.
So it's like RTI sets a higher bar for transparency, doesn't mess around.
Exactly. It's like that super organized friend who always remembers every detail.
I know that type, but did they just leave it at that?
Actually, no. Based on that first study, they went back and made some tweaks to RTI.
Oh, that's cool. So they were listening to the feedback?
Yeah, they made the descriptions of the criteria a bit clearer, and they added a whole new one focused on effect size.
Effect size. Now, what is that?
It's basically how big of a difference something makes.
Okay.
Not just whether it's statistically significant, passes the math test.
Yeah.
But like, does it actually matter in the real world? How big is the impact?
Ah, so it's about practical significance, not just the numbers themselves.
Exactly. So they added that in, and then they did a second study.
Oh, so they tested it out again.
Yeah, same deal,
Yeah.
comparing RTI to those human experts.
How did round 2 go?
Even better this time. The agreement between RTI scores and what the humans said was even stronger.
Wow, so those tweaks really made a difference.
They did. It really showed that RTI is reliable and valid.
Okay. I'm sold. So now we have this powerful tool that can help us make research more transparent. But how do we actually use it? Like for students, reviewers, everyone we talked about before.
Let's start with students. Imagine submitting your thesis and knowing that it meets those high standards for transparency.
Yeah, that would be a game changer. Makes the whole process less stressful, I bet.
For sure. RTI helps students understand what good research writing looks like and make sure their work is top-notch. It's like having a guide right there with you.
I wish I had that when I was a student.
Right. Now for journal reviewers, RTI can save them so much time. Instead of combing through every little detail, they can use RTI to quickly flag potential issues.
And then they can spend more time on the big stuff, like is the research actually good and important?
Exactly. It makes them more efficient and helps them focus on what matters most.
But what about the rest of us? People who aren't publishing in journals but still need to make sense of all the research out there.
Let's say you're a business leader and you're trying to decide whether to start a new training program based on some research you read.
Okay, yep.
Or maybe you're a parent researching different educational approaches for your child.
Or maybe you're just trying to figure out if that new diet everyone's talking about is actually backed by science.
Exactly. In all those situations, RTI can help you cut through the noise and figure out if the research is actually credible.
So it helps you become a more informed consumer of research no matter what you're looking for.
Exactly. But remember, RTI is just one tool. It's not about blindly trusting the score.
Right, you still have to think critically.
Absolutely. You need to look at the whole picture. Were the methods clearly explained? Do other studies find similar things? Are there any red flags that pop up?
So it's about asking the right questions and using RTI as a starting point for your own deeper dive into the research.
And that brings us to something really interesting. What's next for RTI and this whole idea of research transparency?
Ooh, okay, I'm intrigued.
The researchers behind RTI, they're thinking about using it to study how transparency is changing in different fields.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah. Like, are some fields doing better than others? Are certain types of research more prone to transparency issues?
So it's like using RTI to see how the research world is doing overall.
Exactly. And this isn't just for academics either. Think about funding agencies and policymakers.
Yeah.
They could use RTI to decide which research projects to support. Imagine a world where funding goes to the most transparent research.
That would be amazing. It would encourage everyone to prioritize transparency right from the start.
Exactly. And it would help make sure that the research we use to make important decisions is as trustworthy as possible.
Okay, I'm convinced RTI is a game changer. But before we wrap up, I'm curious about something. You mentioned earlier that RTI isn't perfect. What are some of the limitations?
Yeah, it's not a magic bullet or anything. Like I said, the scoring system, it's kind of basic. It doesn't always show all the details.
Right. Like just a pass or fail, not the whole picture.
Yeah, kind of like that. And right now it's mostly for quantitative research, numbers and stats and all that.
Yeah. Not so much for qualitative stuff.
Right, which is way more about interpretation and all that.
Yeah, totally different beast.
But even with those things, it's still a huge improvement.
For sure.
And they're not done yet. It's still working on it, making it better all the time.
That's good to hear.
Trying to make the scoring more detailed, and make versions for different types of research.
It'll keep getting more and more useful.
Exactly. And it's not just about the tool itself. It's about the whole culture of research,
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Like making transparency the standard, the expected thing. RTI gets people talking about it, helps everyone raise their game.
Researchers, reviewers, everyone involved. Right?
Exactly. It's about better quality research, making sure we can actually trust the information we're using.
Right, because it affects all of us in the end.
It really does. So, yeah, it's more than just checking boxes on a list.
It's about a deeper commitment, right?
Yeah, being open about how you did the research, giving people enough information to understand and check if it's valid.
Being accountable not just to other researchers, but to the public, too.
Exactly. And that's where RTI comes in. It helps researchers think more carefully, be more transparent from the start.
So it's a tool, but it's also like a way of thinking, a mindset.
I think so, yeah. And that can have a huge impact.
How so?
Well, when researchers are transparent, it makes everything easier. Reviewers can do their jobs better, journals can maintain high standards, and people can actually trust the research that shapes our world.
It all comes back to trust, doesn't it?
It really does. Transparency builds trust, which leads to better research, which benefits everyone.
A virtuous cycle, as they say.
Exactly. So we've talked a lot about RTI today, but now we want to hear from you, the listener.
Yes, our listeners. What are your thoughts?
How could you use RTI in your own work or just in your everyday life when you come across research?
Are you a researcher yourself, working on a new project? Or maybe you're a business leader making important decisions based on the latest findings.
No matter what you do, RTI can be a valuable tool. It's about embracing transparency and making sure the research we use is truly worthy of our trust.
That's it for our deep dive into the Research Transparency Index. We hope you found it insightful and helpful.
And remember, the quest for knowledge never ends. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into the research that matters to you.
Until next time, keep those minds curious,